Whew. Well, you are not going to want to miss this conversation with Lisa Schmidt. She's also known as the Sober Hipster. She started something called the Story Box, and she's going to share with us what that is and how creativity played a huge role in her recovery. We're also going to talk about her sexual orientation and how coming out affected her drinking days and her drugging days, as well as her recovery. So buckle up. Let's go for a ride with Lisa Schmidt.
Here, we want to show you what's possible in the world of sobriety. We introduce you to the various tools, programs, and resources available, because there are way more options than you may even realize. We want you to find the one that works for you.
And we do it through people. People who share their pathway to recovery and will help you find your path to freedom. Because getting sober can feel hard enough. You don't have to do it alone. I'm Sarah Roberts.
And I'm Roger DeVoe, and this is Sobriety Starts Here.
I am so excited to be having this conversation with Lisa Schmidt. Welcome to Sobriety Starts Here. I want to talk to you about a whole bunch of things, but first and foremost, I want to welcome you. So thank you for being here.
Hi, Sarah. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm so glad you are. So Lisa, you run the popular blog, thesoberhipster.com, and you also have started something called the Story Box. And I want to learn more about how creativity fueled you in your recovery and how it really served you in recovery. So let's get started first off with your blog, The Sober Hipster, and then we can talk about the Story Box.
Okay. Well, I started the blog in December of 2016. I thought it was a great opportunity to get my own story out there, and writing helps me to process my feelings. And I've always been a better writer than, in my mind, than a speaker. And so it was a very safe way to get out my story. But quickly, a few months after that, I realized I wanted to do more. And as I was exploring other people's blogs and reading their stories, I found the same thing that I had found when I was in treatment and also when I was in the rooms of recovery groups. And that is, I didn't resonate necessarily with these 12 steps or this particular how-to. I resonated with people's stories. And that's what I really felt like was giving me, it's what I hung on to in my early sobriety. And so I kept thinking about what could I do to not only share my story, but also to connect people through story. And as part of my treatment that I went through an intensive outpatient treatment and trauma therapy. We got to participate in art therapy. And I found that it was a way for me to not have to put into words what I was going through. I could use art. And so really the Sober Hipster started as a blog, but became what I wish would have existed in my early recovery. Mm-hmm. It's made up of everything that I found helpful in the beginning, working with my hands. It's not being artistic as much as it is being creative. And I really want to communicate that you don't have to be artistic or an artist to find something of value in the story box. You can, it's working with your hands. And I needed, in early sobriety, I needed to keep busy. Mm-hmm. And I needed my hands to stay busy. And so whether it was ripping and cutting pictures and making collages or journaling, it gave that dexterity, those things that helped me to do that, to stay busy.
It's such a common thing. I've interviewed several others that are that use creativity in their recovery, and that comment about keeping our hands busy. I totally get that. I went back to school when I first got sober. So for me, my hands were busy with writing papers and typing and studying and that kind of thing. But for sure, I understand that need to keep our hands busy with something, and our minds can then kind of go into places that we might otherwise not go. They say that 20 minutes of doing something artistic like that, or coloring, or just any type of relaxation with creativity is like a 20 or an hour long meditation. So I imagine that you were really able to get into more of your story and be able to pull it out using creativity because of that experience that you had in treatment. So I want to know, before we delve into your story, because I'm really itching to go there, I really can't wait to hear more about your story, but let's talk about the story box. So what is the story box, and what's the experience when somebody orders one?
The story box, the way I like to describe it is it's simply art therapy in a box delivered to your doorstep. You don't have to go and search and try to find something to help you. Part of my story in putting this together is that my wife, in my early sobriety, before she was my wife, wanted to get me a gift. And she didn't know what to get me. And she started looking, and there's just not a lot of things out there that you can give someone in sobriety as a gift. And so when I started putting this together, she said, I really wish, as much as you wished it would have existed in your early sobriety, I wish the story box would have existed so I could have given it to you as a gift. So there is that aspect, is that for people, when I was in treatment, I had people sending me letters or, cards or pictures and trying to encourage me. And they were the same way. Like, I didn't know what to get you. I know you're going through this. I know how hard it is, but what do I get somebody in early recovery? So
can I even just interject just for a second to say what amazing friends you must have that they cared that much that they were looking to find gifts for you. I think that's really remarkable, because I don't think a lot of people, I know, many people have spoken about this, that when someone gets diagnosed with another disease like cancer or, other type of illness, or something, tragic happens in a family, all of a sudden we're gathering around, we're making meals for people, we're sending cards, we're buying flowers, we're doing all sorts of wonderful, kind gestures. And yet, when someone's in early recovery, our entire life has been shattered, and yet there's nothing. There really isn't. And when you talked about giving gifts, I remember I've gone on the, I know there are some tokens on the AA websites where there are different necklaces and different charms. And I know some people in the world are, having different wearables and different things, but there's not a lot out there when it comes to recovery gifts. So I love that you're filling that space in the market. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really simple. It's the story box is made up of a customized journal. I partnered with May Designs to create a journal. I have what's called story cards, and it's guided art therapy exercises, and includes everything from mindfulness, meditation, listening to music, journaling, putting together collages and other art projects. But it's these little cards on a ring that you're not left to figure out, what do I do with what's here? You can expand it as much as you want, or you can do simply what's on the card. So there's usually 12 to 15 of those in a box. I throw in a couple of pins, some Mod Podge, an applicator, a sticker. Usually there's some sort of a greeting card already stamped, so that as part of one of the exercises, it can be mailed to someone. Again, because it embodies everything that I went through. Receiving cards from people when I was in early sobriety, early treatment, to say, I'm thinking about you. Or the flip side, and what I've done in the box, is to be able to thank people who are walking that road with you, and to start to cultivate that gratitude. Because I'm telling you, in recovery and sobriety, gratitude is the foundation for everything that I do now, and has been for the last 4.5 years. And so I really try in the box to help develop that sense of gratitude, because it's hard it can be angry in early recovery, and so again, from my own experience, once I surrendered and could surrender to being grateful for, just that day and in that moment, it really helped. And so the exercises are designed with that in mind, approaching it from a position of gratitude. And again, it's real simple, but it comes in a great box, and it's delivered right to you. So I've had one person who ordered one, and she said, can you not put anything on the outside of the box? Do you mind not putting it, with I have a logo and a stamp and everything. She goes, could you just send it in a plain box so that when it comes here, I don't have to explain what it is, because everybody, even though they might want to learn and understand about their own story and what they're going through, they're not ready to share yet. And so it was a really cool opportunity for me to remember that, there's still that stigma. It's not easy to be out there in recovery and sobriety always. And so,
and even though the box only says you matter, your story matters, like that's what's stamped on the box. She didn't want that either.
Well, and it also has the sober hipster.
Yeah.
So I think the word sober.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. And I guess that makes sense. I think that's really good feedback. And maybe there's an opportunity for you to say, do you want a plain box or do you want a stamped box? I mean, I guess it might be that.
No, it was the only time it happened, but I mean, those things are important to remember, that, we get further along in our journey, and I always want to be mindful of where I was then.
Oh my gosh, you are speaking my language. I mean, Sobriety Starts Here started because I realized I had been doing such a disservice, 16 years sober, and yet I could barely say the word sober, alcoholic. I couldn't use any of these words up until a few years ago. So I totally get that shame keeps us mired. And that's why we're doing this work. You're doing your work. I'm doing this because it's a way to show that, when we recover out loud, it really does help to break down those walls, that stigma, that shame that is attached to addiction and to recovery. We can really start to break down those walls with using stories. So I love what you're doing with the story box, and I love what you're doing with really honoring people having a story. And so so there are different prompts. There are 12 or 15 prompts. You've got some pens, you've got Mod Podge, you've got all different things and prompts that are telling us how to use the story box. And then there's also an amazing t-shirt in there. I don't know if you can sit up and show us your t-shirt, but I know that that's also,
No, the shirt's not part of the box.
Oh, it's not part of the box. Okay.
No.
But we can
sold separately.
But we can get a box or a t-shirt by going to your website as well. So tell us, where can people order a story box and a t-shirt? Where can they find you?
It's just the soberhipster.com, and I'm at the Sober Hipster on Instagram.
Fantastic. Yeah, Instagram, such an amazing place to connect with other people in recovery, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's amazing. So we've touched a little bit on your story, and I want to delve right into it. So I know you've written about it in several places, but I want to really to have this really honest conversation with you. And I'm hoping that we can go as far as you want to go with it. But I want to start at the beginning, telling us where and how you were raised, and working our way all the way back to where we are, and we'll make our way full circle at the end.
Okay. So I was born and raised in West Virginia until the age of 10. At the age of 10, my parents divorced, and I left there with my mom and my brother. I have a younger brother, 5 years younger than me, and we moved to Texas. I lived in Texas from the age of 10 until 18. I really consider Texas where I grew up. I consider myself a Texas girl at heart.
Yeah.
Everything is bigger and better because of Texas. And I lived in a small town, very much like Friday Night Lights. Football was everything. Everything shut down on Friday night. We won state championship my junior and senior year. I mean, it was a big, big deal. Also, I was raised by a single mom, and my dad was not in the picture very much. Summers were spent with him. But so I had the upbringing of a single mom working hard to provide for two kids, and a dad who didn't really meet his responsibilities. And so part of that story is that I grew up in an abusive home. My dad is an alcoholic, drug addict, and I grew up witnessing a lot of violence and abuse.
Even after your mom moved you out of that house?
Yes. So, growing up as a child, I witnessed some of that, but then once we moved to Texas and I was sent to stay with him during the summers, as that was part of their agreement, he remarried, and that abuse continued with his second wife, and the drinking and the drugging, same thing. It wasn't until I was a senior in high school that I finally was able to say, I'm not going. So I was exposed to a lot of that. I started drinking at the age of 13. I was in middle school, and using everything from weed to painkillers to anything really that I could get my hands on. And, you know, as a teenager, I think I learned how to be a functioning, I know this may sound weird, I think I learned how to be a functioning alcoholic as a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
I maintained really good grades. I played sports. I didn't have the story of, you know, being an outsider at school with that kind of stuff. I was able to kind of, you know, operate on a level that would, by all appearances, and that's what I wanted,
Yeah.
was to be successful at school, successful at playing sports, all of that.
Did your friends drink the same way and drug the same way as you, or were you even hiding it from your friends?
I wasn't hiding it from my friends. I did it with my friends more I'd say maybe in middle school. Once I got into high school, I did start drinking alone, and I did start smoking weed alone. And I had a surgery at one point and was prescribed, you know, Percocet, fell in love with that, the high that, you know, came with that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, you know, I can look back now, and I remember I had one good friend, you know, I grew up in the 80s. So we passed notes, you know, so it was all the thing to write and pass notes. And I remember one of my friends writing me a note and saying, you know, you don't have to always party with drugs and alcohol. You can still have a good time. And I didn't get it. You know, that was how you had a good time. And, I don't know if I'm answering your question. Sorry.
No, and I don't care if you answered it or not. I'm curious, are you still in touch with that friend who wrote that note? I'm just curious.
No, I've tried to find her. I've done the Facebook search and everything and tried to find her, and I can't find her.
Man, that just feels like such a whisper from the universe to me. When I hear things like that, it kind of gives me goosebumps, because I mean, that was somebody who, she was seeing something in you, and she was doing her best in her way to help you at that time. And it just wasn't your time to heed that message. But I think it's always fascinating to be able to look back and see some of these signposts along the way.
Sure. And, you know, and what I thought was partying, you know, looking back, I'll give you a quick example. The day that I graduated from high school, we had a breakfast at the school that morning. I drank before we went to breakfast. We did the breakfast, and then there was me and two of my friends. I went to get my hair done. We drank through that. Then we went back to this friend that wrote the note, actually. We went back to her house and laid by the pool all afternoon drinking. By the time it was time to line up and go on the football field for graduation, I mean, I was lit. You know, I remember getting my diploma, walking across the stage, and then, you know, the partying started right after, and then I blacked out. So I can't even tell you what I did the rest of my graduation night.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that was normal. It was a reason to celebrate, a reason to party.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it from morning till I passed out and blacked out.
So were you always a blackout drinker? I was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And you just kind of felt like that was normal. Like that was how you ended a night. It ended up in passing out.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So at the age of 18, I left Texas again with my mom. My younger brother had come to Florida, where we live now. I live in Orlando. He had moved to live with my dad, and my mom and I, when I graduated from high school, we moved to Florida, and that's where I've been for the last 30 years now.
Can I ask, did your brother not experience or witness the same kind of abuse that you had in the home? I'm wondering why he would choose to go and live with your father.
That's a really good question. I think we've just recently reconnected, and we've been talking about this stuff. I was his protector, and I kept him from seeing a lot of the stuff that I did. And he's now trying to fill in the blanks. And so it's been really interesting to talk to him and to realize that he really didn't see. I mean, I'm thankful in some respects. In others, it's just kind of, it's part of my story and part of our story together that I didn't realize I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I am thankful that I was able to shelter him from some of it, but he has a lot of gaps now trying to figure out why certain things happened the way they did.
Yeah, it's just so interesting with family dynamics and how things play out over time. I'm curious, and I know we can't label anybody else. Does your brother struggle with addiction, or does he not have any?
He went the opposite way. So whereas I grew up watching it, and this is how you handle your emotions, and this is how you celebrate and have a good time, he went the extreme opposite end. He doesn't like to touch anything. He won't, anything for pain. He doesn't like to drink. He might have an occasional beer, but he's one of those who truly appreciates the taste of a craft beer with a meal. But that is about the extent, because he is so afraid of becoming what our dad was, and how addiction has affected me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's also somewhat of a common story, where people either kind of go one way or the other way when it comes to having parents that are addicted. So keep going with your story. Actually, I did want to ask you though, so you mentioned way back that you loved pain medication early on. Was the first time that you tried it after that surgery?
Yes, I was in 9th grade. Yeah.
In 9th grade. And so were you addicted then to opioids from that point? Like, did you use them regularly?
Yeah, absolutely. I used mine. I got all the refills I could. I would go to friends' houses, and I was that kid that was checking medicine cabinets.
Wow.
And I would take people's medicines. I took things, somebody could tell me it was speed, and I didn't question it. I just took it. But I think I need to pause as far as my story. There is a big piece that also affects my story and all of this. So not only did I grow up in this home where I was walking on eggshells all the time, and it was abusive and violent, I was also walking around with a really big secret. When I was as early as the 2nd grade, I have my first memory of feeling different. When all of my girlfriends were talking about the little boys that they liked, and when you were in that "this is my boyfriend" phase and everything, I didn't have those feelings, and I had to start pretending to like what I saw everyone else liking. But at the time I'm dealing with these crushes on my girlfriends. They're talking about these boys, and I'm crushing on them. And it was a real, sorry.
No, take your time. Take your time.
Growing up the way that I did as well, I already didn't feel good enough. I felt like I had to perform at a very high level. I felt like I had to earn the love of my dad, pretty much is how I would say it. And so I was always looking for his approval and his love. It never occurred to me, in the 2nd grade, I didn't have words like gay or lesbian or queer or any, none of that was a factor. I just knew different. I feel different. Why do I feel this way when all of my friends are talking and feeling this way? And then I got into, middle school, and I was an athlete. So I played basketball and tennis and softball and stuff. And so then my crushes kind of started extending to coaches or teachers. It wasn't just friends. Yeah. And again, I felt trapped inside of myself. When you find out that a teacher or a coach is gay, at least for me back in the 80s, it was always whispered. It was always the hush thing, do you know she's gay? Do you know he's, and it wasn't something I didn't see any pride in it. And so then as I got into high school, I remember there were only 2 people in my class. There was a gay guy and a girl that was, that And when I say that, like, they weren't open. I
Mhm.
just could only identify 2 people in my high school class that were. And again, it was very hush hush. There was,
And
so all this.
were you open with yourself? Did you label yourself gay from an early age, or did you just not know that? Did you just feel different? How did that manifest?
Childhood definitely felt different,
Yep.
but by middle school and high school, I absolutely knew
Yep.
that what I had been feeling and what I had known myself to be was gay all along.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't have the words earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was almost as if I was living 2 different lives. There was the person that I was to everyone else, and then there was the me inside that I never told anyone.
And you
I
never acted
never,
on any of those crushes or urges at all?
no,
Mm-hmm.
I did not have any experience with that until much later.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and do you feel like that really fueled your drug and alcohol use because you were hiding this big secret for so long?
yeah, because, I was trying to be something that I wasn't. And at least when I was drinking, when I was high, I didn't have to pretend as hard. I could relax a little bit. I could let my guard down a little bit. Not that I was going to tell anyone, but I didn't have to. It was just an escape.
Yeah.
It was an escape from everything that either was going on in my life or I was feeling inside.
Were you ever worried? Because I know for me, when I would get drunk, I mean, my inhibitions lowered, and I like that. I like that my inhibitions lowered. I like that I could lose control and allow whatever happened to happen. Were you ever concerned when you were drinking or drugging that you would lower your inhibitions and something might happen and then you'd have to come out?
No, not early on. I was so afraid of, being labeled or, because I already felt so different. I didn't want to be labeled that, so I wasn't going to take any kind of chance.
No.
Yeah.
So were you dating boys then? So middle school and then getting into high school, you're dating boys?
Oh yeah, I did. I went to homecoming. I went to proms. I dated and the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then when we moved to Florida and I was 18, that's when so another part of my story is I have sexual abuse in my story. I met a guy when I was in college, again, trying to fit in, and, I was doing the partying thing, and we ended up together, and I don't talk about it that much, but we actually got married. But I knew in my gut, in my instincts, I knew something was wrong, something was off about this person. I just didn't want to be alone. When we moved to Florida, my mom remarried. He had 3 children that were younger.
Oh, so you have like instant step siblings.
Yes. And I went from it being me and my mom to not feeling like I had a place. And I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. And so I couldn't live with my mom and my stepdad and family. There wasn't room for me, literally. And so I lived with a friend. I was working, going to college, and I met your typical bad boy. Really good looking, gorgeous blue eyes, the smile, everything. And I thought, this is the guy. And I knew that, nobody would like him. He's a little bit of a rebel and that sort of thing. So we were married. I don't even remember the wedding night because
you were drunk or using?
And yeah, I was using, but also it was the start of an 8-week chapter of my life that was pretty horrific. I think he probably drugged me with something that night, and it wasn't much. was a few weeks later that he would rape me one night. And I know it may be hard for people to think, well, you were married, how did he rape you? But he did. And the next morning when he left to go to work, I called my mom, and that was it. You know, we moved me out during the day, and I was done.
I'm so glad that you had your mom's support. And for anyone that is listening and thinking, what do you mean you were married? I mean, rape is just as simple as if you don't want to have sex with somebody and they have sex with you anyway. I mean, it's just as simple as that. So married or not, I mean, I am so sorry that that is part of your story, but I'm so grateful to your mother for believing you, for seeing what was going on, and for getting you out of that situation immediately, as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I'm grateful for that as well. The only problem with that was I was told it happened not by her, but I had family who said, okay, this happened, you need to move on. And I never talked about it. And the fact that I'm even talking about it right now, I wasn't even expecting that I would talk about it. So, but I believe that it's these sharing and talking about this stuff, like we said before we started, that makes all the difference. So
honestly, Lisa, it's everything, because right now in this moment, there is a woman watching that has experienced something like what you've experienced. And right now they are saying, oh my God, I am not alone. So thank you for sharing that. I know that these kinds of conversations aren't easy, and I really want to honor you for doing what you're doing.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So after that happened, it wasn't cut and dry. He stalked me. I mean, there was a lot involved, but I didn't talk about it. I didn't deal with it. I pushed it down like I'd done everything in my life. Like I said, growing up, you never talked about your feelings. You never talked about what went on in the home. You just didn't. And you knew that I literally felt like if I talk, I will get in trouble. That's how I associated it. So with this, it happened, move on. So everything just keeps getting stuffed down. My emotions, the things that have happened, and who I really am. I met a really great guy after this happened, and great in the sense that I had never been treated so nice by a man in my life. And I thought, this is what maybe it's just because I haven't met the right guy. We started dating. While we were dating, while I was in college, I got pregnant. And for both of us, it wasn't even a thought. It was, we very much were going to have this baby, even though we're not married, giving the baby up or an abortion. None of that was an option. I'm not saying I'm not making a judgment on that. I'm just saying for us, even though we had only been together a short time, we knew that we wanted to keep the baby. And for me, it went beyond that. I remember finding out when I found out that I was pregnant, I remember looking at it was EPT at the time. I remember looking at that pregnancy stick and thinking, maybe now I'm going to be a mom. And we knew we were going to get married after the baby was born. I needed to be on my mom's insurance. So that was the issue. But it's like, I'm going to be a mom and I'm going to be a wife. This will be the thing that changes me.
And when you say maybe now, you mean maybe now I can be straight? Like maybe
yes.
now
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought it was the thing that would change me. So fast forward. So we have a daughter. 4 years later, I have a son. And, early on, I think I was thinking it was working. I loved my husband, like I said, great guy. And we were building this family. And by all appearances, we're living that American dream.
Can I ask, what was your drug and alcohol use looking like while you were pregnant, and then during that time of that early marriage and the rest of it? Like, did you two drink together? Was that part of your story?
Absolutely. So while I was feeling like, okay, maybe things were going to change within me. We not only drank together and partied together, I was drinking in order to be able to have sex.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's it had nothing to do with him and everything to do with me.
Sure.
If I knew that he wanted sex, or that, you know, it was looking like, okay, this is the Friday night or the Saturday or whatever, absolutely alcohol was involved, because that gave me the courage to have sex.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are parts of my story I'm not proud of. And as we go in, you know, I was married for almost 17 years. We were together almost 20.
Hmm.
And about, you know, 15 later in the marriage, it's hard. It's really hard to keep it going, you know?
Yeah.
And we really started having problems because the times that we had, you know, that we were intimate and that we had sex were getting fewer and far between.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I mean, sex can be a pressure in a marriage anyway.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would try, and it just, I felt like I was hitting a wall.
And so this entire time that you're married, I know you said when you were getting married, you were like, maybe now I'm going to have a baby, I'm going to be married, and maybe now I can change. At any point during the marriage, were you feeling like you might be getting straighter? Like, and I know, and I laugh only because, I mean, oh my God, this is your sexual orientation. Like, this is who you are. You are a gay woman, a beautiful, amazing, powerful, courageous, awesome, incredible gay woman. Like, that's just part of who you are. So was there ever a point though that you were thinking, this is working?
Well, so part of the other part of the story when I'm married is once my daughter was born, and then 4 years later my son was born, I was introduced to church and religion. And I felt like I owed it to my children to raise them in a church. I wasn't raised in a church. I wanted them to have that. I've always believed that there was a God. I didn't know much, but I did believe in God. I believed there was something higher. My mom started taking my daughter to Sunday school when she was 3, and she fell in love with it, went every Sunday. So when my son was born and my daughter was 4, we decided, the 3 of us, to get baptized together, because that was going to be the thing. That was going to be the thing. It wasn't just being a mom. It wasn't just being a wife. I figured it out. I needed God. If I was baptized, then God would change me then.
Mm-hmm.
So I was baptized. Then I started volunteering in church. Fast forward, I even end up becoming the youth director, and I end up going to seminary. And again, it just keeps playing out. Okay, you're going to be a youth director. You're going to be working with other people's children, and you're going to be teaching them, you know, biblical teachings, and you're going to seminary. You're studying God's word, you know. So honestly, it's like an obstacle course. Like I'm jumping hurdles every time, thinking this will be the thing, this will be the thing, this will be the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm sitting in a seminary classroom, still a gay woman, trying to figure out why God won't change her. And not only why God won't change me, but so afraid that God doesn't love me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what really, you know, it's one thing for people to tell you, and I've been told, you know, you're going to go to hell. You know that you're an abomination. I'm sorry, I won't see you in heaven. You know, when I came out to my father 8 years ago, it'll be 8 years ago in August, you know, his last words that were said to me were, "Get out of my house, you faggot." And I haven't seen or spoken to him since. Mm-hmm. You know, so when I came out, I had decided, I reached a point in my job I called it a calling. I felt called to youth ministry. and was in a United Methodist church. And I reached the point where I could no longer reconcile who I am with the doctrine of the Methodist Church.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to resign. And I did. I resigned. After that, I didn't realize, people talk about coming out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
When I came out, I lost everything. I lost a job, because working in a church was my job, but it was also my ministry. So I lost my job. I lost my ministry. I was losing my marriage. I lost friends and family that I had I guess I was naive, maybe, to think that because they were Christian and called themselves Christian, that they would see past that and love me still for who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was made to write a letter. The pastor of the church made me write a letter to all the parents telling them that I was gay. And that I was, not that I was gay, that I was getting a divorce. I apologize. Not that I was gay, but that I was getting a divorce. And I had to send it to every parent, making them aware that I was going through a divorce. And that alone made me feel like I was being crucified. Mm-hmm. So why would I also say that I'm gay? No. Like, if you're going to crucify me for getting a divorce, why would I even tell you that that's part of it?
Mm-hmm.
Also, during this time, I finally get the courage to come out to my husband. And was probably one of the hardest nights of my life. Standing outside, waiting to go into an Orlando Magic game. We had been in counseling, marriage counseling, and it was Christian marriage counseling, and it was still tough, and it wasn't working.
Yeah.
And I knew at the root of why it wasn't working. And I told him, and the other part that I had to confess to him was that I had been seeing a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And that was rough. I mean, I thought in telling him that I was going to be free in that moment. This is who I am, and this is what's been going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I was free for that night. Because the next morning I was sitting in a Christian counselor's office with him and with her. And
your new partner?
Well, she wasn't my partner. I mean, it was an affair.
Okay. But she was in the counseling session with you?
Mm-hmm. Because we were friends. We were, so everything, was brought into this counselor's office, and I was told, you're not going to see her. You're not going to communicate with her. This is how we're going to handle this. And we're going to get more into the Christian counseling. And it was at that point that I was made to go to Exodus. For those who don't know what Exodus was, they're no longer in existence, thank goodness. It's reparative therapy. And I was made to watch films and read literature, and basically
trying to make you ungay.
Right, as if it was my choice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the marriage didn't end there. It was by the time I got to the point of asking my husband for a divorce, one of two things was going to happen. I was either going to continue in the marriage and doing life the way that we had and pretending and end up killing myself, or we were gonna have to end it. I mean, I don't know how else to say it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was a very painful, when we told our children, I told them, I basically came out to them when I had also told them about the divorce. How
old were your kids when you came out to them and told them about the divorce?
My son was 13 and my daughter was 17.
Mm-hmm.
So not only did they hear my parents are getting a divorce, they're hearing my mom's gay.
Wow. And can I ask, did your husband, when you told him, when you came out to him before that basketball game, basketball, is that the right sport?
Yes, yes.
Not much of a sporty. When you came out to him, what was his reaction? You're about to go and watch a basketball game, and I'm curious about his reaction, and then I'm also wondering, had anything ever come up ever in the marriage that would have signaled to him that there was an issue here, or that you were gay, or were there any kind of signs?
I think so, yes. Yeah. I don't think at the time that he realized, I think he probably now, if you were to ask him that question, he would say, yes, looking back, there was this occasion when this and this, he would give you different examples of where he would have probably said, I should have picked up on that. But we were fighting so hard. We both came from divorced homes. We didn't want that for our kids. We were in the church. I was, like I said, a youth director. He was actively involved. Our kids were actively involved. We had people over from the church all the time. So, and I want to make sure that I'm clear that while I was pretending to be straight, all of my life wasn't a lie, or, I wasn't able to be who I was. So yes, I was pretending to be straight, but I was still genuine in my relationships, if that makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense. And I mean, yes, of course, our sexual orientation is such a huge part of who we are as people, but it's not everything. Just like when I talk about addiction, it's a huge part of my story, but it's not all of me. It's not everything. Right. So that totally makes sense to me. And I also just wanted to make sure, when you had just used the words, you and your husband were fighting so hard, what you mean is you were fighting so hard to hold on to the marriage. You were working so hard to, you weren't fighting and arguing in your marriage.
No. We were both, we were working really hard to try to stay together. And honestly, I think, again, I kept waiting for the thing that was going to change me.
Yes.
And it wasn't happening. And I don't know why, but for me, it's like I had to exhaust every possible. I mean, this will tell you how, so when I was baptized with my kids, we were sprinkled in the church. I ended up getting baptized in the ocean thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't do it right. I didn't get baptized right. I was sprinkled, so I needed to be immersed. It sounds crazy now, but all I wanted was to be loved for who I am. And I was scared to death that God wasn't going to love me.
So you were really, you did not want to be gay, and you wanted this thing to just go away. You weren't looking to figure out how you could come out and be open. You were just seeking and searching how to get rid of this thing about you.
Oh yeah. And once religion came into the picture, I thought I was going to be like Paul with a thorn in my side. I had a pastor, I went on to work in an Episcopal church, and I was told, I could be gay, but I couldn't act on it. So I kept getting these messages, we love you, but, you can be who you are. We'll love you. You can be gay. I went to one church. I was attending, I don't know, maybe 3 months, and they were encouraging people to get into a small group. And this is Orlando. This is downtown Orlando. And they were offering these groups, and I decided, okay, well, maybe I'll get more involved in this church. It seems pretty, I had met with the pastor before, had coffee, talked to them, had come out and said, this is who I am. I'm looking for an open and affirming church. A few months into it, I go to this small group meeting and find out that they offer a group for people struggling with that particular sin, and they want to help you overcome it.
Okay.
So I kept getting these messages over and over of, we love you, but, we can love you, but not the sin. Love this, love the sinner, hate the sin. And just all of these messages. So it wasn't until I came out to my, obviously I came out to my husband at the time and my kids first. And then I came out to my mom. And then as I began coming out to other people, I still wasn't fully out at my job, for instance. I could, even after the divorce, I wasn't out at work because I was afraid of being discriminated against.
And now you mentioned how your dad reacted 8 years ago. How did your mom react when you came out to her?
It's been unconditional love and support from the moment I told her.
Amazing.
Yeah. Truly, I'm grateful to have, a parent, a mom who has been absolutely amazing in that respect.
And did she suspect it as you were growing up? I mean, were you a tomboy when you were a kid?
I was a tomboy.
Yeah.
But I also, she also had me in dance and ballet, and I had Barbies. And so I think she just always thought. Did you
like those things? I'm just curious, as a young girl, did you like those things?
I don't think, no, when I could give up dancing, are you kidding? I was so excited to give up dancing and pick up a basketball and a baseball bat. And, I was the kid that I was the girl that played on the boys' sports teams. And no, so I didn't enjoy it the same as maybe other girls did.
But does your mom, when you came out to her, was there any, I knew it, like no way.
No, she just thought tomboy. And, I think, we haven't really talked about it too much. It's been more important for her to let me talk to her and come to her and share things. So never occurred to me to say, did you think I was, or anything like that.
I love the support that she has shown you. And she sounds like a pretty incredible woman from what you've told us, just the way that she packed up her bags and took you out of a dangerous situation when you were young. And then when you got pregnant, right away, it was, good for you. And let's work on this. I really love what you're sharing about your mom. She sounds like an amazing, amazing woman. So you're lucky to have a wonderful influence like her in your life, because you've needed it. You have not had a ton of support. So share with us then, so where is your rock bottom with alcohol and drugs, and when is it that you kind of are finally able to come out, and are those two things colliding? Like, how does it all look?
So in the fall of 2013, I reached a point where I developed feelings for a woman who again was married. And I think because I wasn't out in every aspect of my life. I hadn't fully accepted it for myself. I think a married woman felt safe in the sense that this time I knew nothing could happen. So it was almost like it was safe in the sense that I knew there wouldn't be anything to happen, but it was also devastating to know that here I was having feelings for another woman who was in a married relationship, because it could never be, what I would want. And
so you are now divorced from your husband. You've now moved on from that relationship. Okay, yeah. So you're single.
And I'm single. And and I learned later that there had been infidelity on his part, because we couldn't. He wasn't getting what he needed. I wasn't getting what I needed. So we both looked outside of the marriage. So now I'm single, but I'm not out in every aspect of my life. I'm still trying to do the Christian thing. I'm trying to reconcile my faith with who I am. And I end up in a situation where I have these feelings for someone, knowing that it's not possible, knowing it's a dead end. And one day this person says to me, acknowledged, I guess, because I think it had been reciprocated to an extent. And it sent me into a panic, because I thought, here we go again. Like, I'm not proud of the infidelity. I'm not proud of the affair that I had with the woman. I'm not, and there was more than one woman. And to go through that, you know, to go through the divorce, to go through those relationships, and then to be in a place where here I am again having feelings for the wrong woman. I just spiraled. I was at work. I received a message from her that she had said something to her husband, and
Oof.
it sent me reeling. And I left work, I went home, and I started drinking. And at the time I had stuff for anxiety, Xanax, and I just started drinking and taking pills, and before I knew it, I was, you know, planning my funeral. Basically, I was texting someone and saying, this is what I want you to tell my kids. You know, I really spiraled, and I didn't want to die in the sense that, you know, it wasn't like this planned out suicide attempt. It was a spiraling of, I cannot live like this anymore. Mm-hmm. All I'm going to do is hurt the people that I love. And I truly believed in that moment that everyone, including my kids, would be better off without me. And I honestly didn't believe that I mattered, and I didn't believe that my story mattered. And I woke up, I didn't think I'd wake up the next morning, but I did. Mm-hmm. I got in touch with my therapist, and I ended up in a treatment program. And so it was going to treatment and going through trauma therapy and talking about my story for the first time, mm-hmm. kind of like what we've done tonight here, to realize that I had been through trauma. You know, that what I call trauma now was my life, my story. You know, I didn't know any different. It was just mine. And I thought it was normal. I thought you didn't talk about things that happened and went on in your family. I thought you didn't talk about your feelings. I didn't think that you could be who you were and be loved for that. So I didn't know any different. And then I went off to this treatment program, and I have people telling me, you know, that you've been through trauma. And I honestly thought, Sarah, when I went, I thought, okay, I'm going to go deal with my stuff during the day. Then I'll drink at night to get through that. And then I'll go back the next day. And I did that for a few weeks. And they said, if you're going to do this, you're going to be sober. And we're going to drug test you. And you're going to live here now. I moved into a sober house. I left my job. And I fully immersed myself in the process of finally unpacking my story and figuring out that my addiction was just a symptom of my story. I mean, I didn't love the taste of alcohol. I didn't love drinking. I didn't, you know, it was the high. It was the being able to shut out the story is the reason that I did it. And so to be able to, I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to have someone say, let's not just treat your addiction. Let's look at what is the root of your addiction? And
isn't that that is it? That is where the work lies. And that's where the magic happens. That's where it is. People often will talk about, how do I get sober? And it's just like, oh my God, how do you get sober? You just don't put alcohol in your body or drugs in your body anymore. But that is not the work. It is not the work. It really is getting to the root cause of why we drank or drugged in the first place. It really is such an amazing, just such a cross section of, you know, when you went to treatment, when they tell you, you know, definitely you need inpatient, you need to be in here with us doing this work. That's when the creativity comes up. And then that's when you're able to really fully embrace the truth of your life and share your story with other people. I love that it feels like just this culmination, this final moment where it's like it all kind of came together in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, I was great at writing, but I didn't have words for what I had been through. And so I'll never forget that very first art therapy class. And, you know, it was as simple as an assignment, you know, one sentence on a whiteboard. And we had all of this creative, supplies and materials at our fingertips, and then to just start working and putting together, and then finding that the words came after. It's been beautiful. I mean, it's something that I created the story box because it's what I wish would have existed when I was going through early sobriety, but it's also something that I continue to use all the time. It's not just something, hey, I did this and I want you to, this isn't a gimmick. I'm not trying to just sell something. I really have put my heart and my soul into this box, and I want other people to really, no matter what, I know my story is different. Everybody's story is different, but everybody matters, and everyone's story matters. And I really hope that whoever opens that box, that they feel that when they open it, that they, when you first open it, there's a card on the top with your name. It's personalized because it's so important to me, because I felt so alone for so long that I don't want anyone to feel alone in their story.
It's absolutely beautiful. You're absolutely beautiful. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your story with us. I know that it is resonating with many, many people that are watching and listening right now. So thank you. Obviously, creativity played a huge role. It's a huge tool in your recovery toolbox. Other than creativity, what are some other tools that you like to use in your recovery?
I believe in, I think, a lot of the same things that a lot of people have learned in recovery. If I can get to the gym and be physical, that helps. Walking, my wife's a runner. I'm not going to run, but I'll do a 5K and walk it. Being outdoors in nature and just enjoying, whether it's at the beach or wherever, just spending that time outdoors. And self-care is huge in the sense of trying to eat right and sleep and, all the things that we think don't matter, that they really do,
Oh yeah.
So I tried to do those.
Sleeping, eating well, moving our bodies, and meditating and doing some beautiful creativity. I mean, I think that is such a recipe for really being able to move in the world and feel authentic and feel like we're accomplishing things. Like, I know how I feel when I'm eating right and sleeping well and doing all the things and meditating. It feels like living. Recovery feels like living vibrantly, and I love that. So you've mentioned your wife a few times. I'd love for you to continue on in your story just a little bit more and share with us. So when did it happen that you were finally fully out and then you were able to meet Lori?
So I, as part of the treatment, I had to embrace finally who I was. And in group therapy, I actually came out to the group that I was a part of, and that was life-changing. I mean, that was it. When I came out to them in treatment, it was the first time I felt like I can be this person, and I was received by everyone in the group. So that made a huge difference. And then when I got out of treatment, I work as a paralegal. I decided not to go back to that work right away because it can be stressful. And I got a job. I got two jobs. One was working in a girls' foster home, and the second was working in a restaurant. And she was working at the same restaurant. And they kept telling me in recovery, okay, you're supposed to wait a year, get 1 year of recovery, sobriety under your belt, and then, get involved. So it was a year and a day, Sarah. I waited a year and a day. And then we got together, and we haven't, I mean, it's been what I always thought it couldn't be, and it's more than I imagined it could be. I'm no longer the things that I had to force and try to be. It's all natural now. I get to wake up next to the woman that I love. I get to share life with her. I don't have to feel ashamed. I can walk down a street holding her hand. And it's not all easy. I won't say that, it's all easy in terms of how we're, we still have some obstacles as far as family and friends, you know, who don't support us and things like that. But because I know who I am, and because I now know that I deserve love, I deserve to be loved for who I am, it's okay. I don't, you know, it's, we've been married for a little over 2 years now. And
Congratulations.
thank you. And it's, it's the chapter of my story that I didn't think would happen, and it's here, and it's beautiful.
It certainly is beautiful. Do you think that it would have been possible had you not gone through recovery? Had you not gotten sober?
No, I think I owe my life to sobriety and recovery.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was going through the motions of life in so many ways before, you know, everybody talks about how, you know, getting sober, you're not going to have fun anymore, and life isn't going to be as full and as vibrant and all of this. And I think that's why I chose the name I did, the Sober Hipster, because sobriety is one of the hippest things I've done in my life. Like, my life is, I know it's crazy, but it is, like, life is hip in ways like I said, I never dreamed that it could be. And I want people to know, wait, sobriety and hip, yeah, you can have both. So.
You really do have both. Like when you and I can both think back on the trajectory of our lives and all those nights and days of drinking and just getting drunk and being on drugs and doing stupid things, like, really, that is, yeah. And we think that that's living, you know, we think that we're really sacrificing when we put it down. And I know in those early days where it's just like, I'm never going to be able to not drink. How am I going to do this? And then it's like, you get some time in it and it's like, oh my gosh, this is living. Yes. This is living. I mean, I just interviewed Holly Whitaker a few days ago, and I love that when I asked her what was the best thing about being sober, and her answer that she never ever has to drink again. And it's like, it's such a funny response. It's such an awesome response, because it's that same feeling when we're quitting drinking. It's like, I'm never going to be able to drink again. Like, we lament it so much and we're so worried. And then when we do it, we realize, oh my God, I never have to do that again. I never have to be there again. Yes. It's so freeing.
Yes, absolutely.
I have to ask the question, how did your children react when you came out to them?
You know, they made it clear very, very early on that they loved me. Mm-hmm. I've never felt anything but love from them. Mm-hmm. The challenge has, again, been religion. You know, I raised my kids in the church, and I'm part of, I didn't teach them that, you know, hate is learned. Like, I didn't teach them to hate or anything like that. They're very loving, but they did grow up believing that being gay is a sin. And I didn't do anything to teach them otherwise, because at the time I was being told it's a sin. So it's difficult. It's a difficult path still. Mm-hmm. And I really don't want to go into too much more about it, but it's, nope. We're still working it out. Mm-hmm. and figuring it out, but I do know that they love me. Mm-hmm. And I'm confident that our shared love of God and God's love for us will one day bring us all on the same page.
That's beautiful. It's a beautiful goal. And I think at the end of the day, as long as the love is there, you know, so much can be said for just knowing that you all love one another and you respect one another. And I'm sure this has not been easy for anybody, but I am just so proud of you. I'm proud to know you. I'm so grateful for you sharing your story. Truly, I mean it. I know how many people are out there and that need to hear these kinds of stories, because you matter and your story matters. And it's funny, I often ended these things before I met you. I would often say you matter and your work matters. And then I was like, oh man, I love that. And I love that you talk about your story mattering. It absolutely does. You're awesome. I want to know what is the best thing about being clean and sober?
The best thing about being clean and sober is wow, I hadn't even thought about this. The best thing about being sober is never having to pretend to be anything but who I am.
It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Lisa Schmidt, thank you. Thank you so much for being with me. Thank you for being with all of us. Thank you for sharing your story. You matter. Your story matters. I love what you're doing. If people want to connect with you, where can they find you? Where's the best place?
Instagram actually is probably the best, at the Sober Hipster. I'm a social media. I'm always on it. So
fantastic. We won't tell your employer that you're on.
Right. Yeah, keep that secret. Thanks,
Once
Sarah.
again,
I really appreciate it. And I love what you're doing with this. It's amazing. You and your husband, and the way that you're putting this together and sharing it as a resource for anybody. I can't wait to watch the other videos myself. So I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you for what you're doing, allowing us to share our stories. I'm just so grateful that you're one of the people leading the way to help other people recover out loud.
I love that. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Well, and right back at you, what you're doing is changing lives, one at a time, one story at a time. I love it. Thank you again for being with me. I can't wait to continue to follow along with what you're doing. And I can't wait to put on my You Matter, Your Story Matters t-shirt. I'm picking that up right as soon as we're done this. I am going online and I'm ordering mine. I'm assuming
awesome.
you ship. I live in Canada. Do you ship to Canada?
I do, all the time.
Excellent. Well, it's happening as soon as we get off this call. Thank you again. Can't wait to keep following along with your stories and what you're all about. I love being with you on Instagram, and I think we're on Facebook as well. I know we are. And so I just love it. Thank you, Lisa, for spending this time with me.
Thanks.
To get access to all of the free videos and interviews, visit SobrietyStartsHERE.com.
The one thing I wish I would have said is that my faith has only gotten stronger. Like where I may be cynical and I'm not in a church. I don't necessarily want to be a part of organized religion. So that part of my life may be fractured and not what it once was. But my faith in God, my relationship with God has never been stronger.
How beautiful is that?